Okay. Chanukah Sameach, Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov. We are getting back into the Gemara, and we are holding on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Bet. In the English on 17B-1, the new paragraph on the left column. And what we've been talking about up until now was the Tashlumin. Okay, the Tashlumin was the makeup days that a person can make up the carbonot of the Chag, the special carbon that he's supposed to bring, the personal carbonis that a person is supposed to bring on the Yom Tov. He didn't bring it up on the Yom Tov, then he brings it on the Tashlumin, on the days following, which we said for Shavuot, it will be 6 days following Shavuot, just like by Pesach, they have the whole 7 days of Pesach. So same thing with Shavuot, you have 6 days after it. We also saw that there was a machloket Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel regarding the korbanot that have to be brought up on Yom Tov. Bet Shammai was of the opinion if something is not le'ochel nefesh, if something is not for food on Yom Tov, then you cannot bring it up as a korban, which would include the olat re'iyah, right? The olat re'iyah is the korban ola that is brought up entirely on the mizbeach and is not eaten by anybody. So even though it's a Yom Tov korban, Beit Shammai says you cannot bring it on Yom Tov. You would have to bring it the day after. Rashi includes in that the korban Chagiga itself. And Beit Hillel says no. Even though it's an old area, Ochel Nefesh means what you need, and just you cannot make food for the dogs or for Goyim, but for Gavoa, for Hashem, for the Mizbeach, that would be permissible. So this is where our Gemara picks up. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah. Atzeret shecha liot erev Shabbat. If Shavuot falls on Friday, right? So Beit Shammai said Yom Tevoach Acher HaShabbat, the day of slaughter will be Sunday. Why? Because according to Beit Shammai, on Friday, which is Yom Tov, I cannot bring the Olat Riyah. I can't bring it on Shabbat either the next day. So I have to bring it on Sunday. Vet Hillel Omrim and La Yom Tevoach. There is no slaughter day. Why? Because according to Ben Hillel, you bring it on the Yom Tov, right? What does this mean? Gemara says, "My love ain't la Yom Tevoach klal." What does it mean? There is no Yom Tevoach. There's no day of a slaughter. What does that mean? Now, the Mefarshim right away ask. Obviously, Beit Hillel says there's a tashlumin because Beit Hillel said that if the Yom Tov was actually on Shabbat, then you're going to bring the karbanos on a Sunday. So if you're bringing it on Sunday, there is a Yom Tashlumin. There is a Yom Tevoach. So some want to say Beit Hillel only holds that if it's Shabbat, then there is a Yom Tevoach. Or maybe the Yom Tevoach is the day after the Chag, but not 2 days later. So that's the question. So when Beit Hillel says, Ein la Yom Tevoach, my love Ein la Yom Tevoach, doesn't it mean there's no Tashlumin at all? Gemara says, no, it doesn't mean that. Rather, it means She'ena Tzricha Yom Tevoach. It does not need a slaughter day because it's Friday. Friday is a regular day. And regular day, you can bring the karbanos of the Yom Tov. Fine. Now, my kamashmalan. What are we getting out of this teaching of Beit Hillel? This is what he's teaching him. Bayoma. Telling us that, hey, Friday is the Yom Tov, you bring it on Friday. We already have this machlokas. It's not Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai says maybe in Shlom Vein Samchim Aleim. Beit Shammai says you bring the Shlom that you can eat, and you don't do smicha of Allah olot. You don't bring olot because you can't bring it that on Yom Tov because it's completely on the mizbech and you don't eat from it. Uvek Hillel Omrim mevi'im shlamim ve'olot v'samchin Aleim, and we do smicha on them. So we already know that you can bring it on Yom Tov. So what is it teaching us by saying there is no Yom Tevoach, which also teaches us you bring it on Yom Tov? So why I need these both teachings? So the Gemara says we need both of them. Tzricha. Why do we need them? The Ashminan Baham. If you would have just told me this case where Yom Tov falls on any day of the week, it falls on Wednesday. Let's use Wednesday as our example. It falls on Wednesday. Bahak Yom Beit Shammai. Mishum Dev Shalom Okay. If the only case was taught about Wednesday or any weekday, I would say that's the time where Beit Hillel says don't bring it on the day of the Yom Tov, bring it on the day after, because the day after you can bring the carbon. But maybe Beit Hillel, if I didn't have the second case about Friday, I would say, according to Beit Hillel, since I can't bring it on Shabbos, maybe 2 days later is not so good. So maybe bring it on the Yom Tov and he'd be moida to Beit Hillel. So therefore, I had to learn this case to tell us the extent of Beit Shammai, that even if it's 2 days later, or even if it's a Friday, you can't bring, and Shabbat you can't bring, and Sunday you can bring, so Beit Shammai still says that. So if it wasn't for that case, I would not know that. Being Ashmin and Midham, and if you only told me the case of Friday, Baha, Kamar Beis Hillel, Mishum Divav Shalom Achar, Ava Baha, Eva Modul Beit Shammai. And the same thing with Beit Hillel, right? If you only told me the case of Friday, I would have said, you know why Beit Hillel says to bring it on Friday and not the day after? Because you can't bring it on the day after. He doesn't want you to wait till Sunday. Therefore, he says you have no choice bring it on Friday. But if it was a regular Wednesday, maybe Beit Hillel will agree. Don't do it on Wednesday. Bring it on Thursday, right? So that factor of the Shabbat can make one think either way, that they don't hold completely to that extent. Therefore, the Mishnah wants to teach us the extent of their shita. The Beit Shammai says even if you have to wait 2 days, you're still going to wait. And Beit Hillel says, always bring it on the Yom Tov. Even if tomorrow is a regular weekday and you can bring it, you still bring it on the Yom Tov. Okay. Toshma. Mi sheloi chag shivat yemei ha-Pesach. There's a brayta that says, if you didn't bring it on the 7 days of Pesach, or on Sukkot, you didn't bring it on the 8 days, and then it says, right? And then it says what? V'yom tov, right? We assume it means Yom Tov. In our English, they spell it out, but in the Hebrew side, Vav Yud Vav Tes, which we would understand meaning usually Yom Tov. But Yom Tov Arishon Shalat Seret Shuv Ein Choygeg. If he didn't bring it on the first day of Shavuot, he doesn't bring it anymore. My love Yom Tov Shalat Seret. Doesn't it mean the Yom Tov of Atzeret? It means there's only one day. According to this bright, there's only one day to bring the carbon of Shavuot. The Gemara says no. This means Lo Yom Tevoach, right? That's what Rashash says. Rashash says when the question was, how do you read the Braita with the abbreviation of Vav Yud Vav Tet, right? Is it the Yom Tov or is it the Yom Tevoach, the day of slaughter, which means the makeup day? So that's what the Gemara is saying. Lo Yom Tevoach it means. Yachi nifshat mina dechad Yom Tevoach. If it's Yom Tevoach, it means there's only one day of Tashlumin, the day after Lamochar, and not the whole week. No. It says Yemei Tevoach. Okay. The word is not Yom Tevoach, but rather Yemei Tevoach, and the Braita agrees with Rabbi Yoshia or Rabbi Shaya's ruling that you have 7 days to bring the korban of Shavuot. And that's the halacha. Okay, Tashma. The Tana Rabbi Shmuel Amar Torah. Torah says, Mene Yamim Mikadesh Chodesh. Count 30 days and sanctify the month. Really, it's not 30 days. We know that the lunar cycle is 29 and a half days and 44 minutes and 3 seconds. Right? That's Tafshin Tzaddik Gimel Chalakim, which turns out to be 44 minutes and 3 seconds. And the Torah says you have to count the days. Now, obviously, you can't count half the days. Therefore, you have to count days. So therefore, sometimes our months are 29, sometimes 30, in order to make up for the half a day, but you also have 44 minutes. All right, so sometimes Chodesh Tevet, like this month, this year, is a 2-day Rosh Chodesh. Sometimes Chodesh Tevet is a 1-day Rosh Chodesh. It is in order to make up the time. So the main idea here is Mana Yamim Mekadosh Atzeret. Then you have another pasuk that says Mana Yamim Mekadosh Atzeret. And then you have another pasuk that says, how do you get to Shavuot? You count days. My Chodesh Limnu Yav, just like the month. When it's sanctified by the day. It goes by the same way it was counted. Afatzeret limnu yeha. So to Shavuot is by the day. My lab gamar michodesh. Ma chodesh yom echad. Afatzeret yom echad. Just like we learned from the month. So too, just as the month is one day, so too Shavuot is one day. And this is against Rav Oshaya, who said that you have a whole week. Rav said, "Tispera atu ateret yomei manin Shavuot lo manin." When it comes to Shavuot, are you counting only days? Don't we count also weeks? V'amar Abaya mitzvah lemimnei yomei. You should count 50 days. We count 49, but it's rounded off to 50. And there's a mitzvah to also count the weeks. You should count 7 weeks. It also says Chag Shavua, right? Chag Shavuot. So what's going on over here? Number one. It says Chag Shavuot. Chag Shavuot means a week, so it means a holiday of a week. I mean, first day is the holiday, and you have Tashlumin to make up. Now, we had before. Why do we need this Chag Shavuot? This last drasha. He's telling me Tisperu Yamim and Tisperu Shavuot. You count both days, and you count also the weeks. So why do I need this extra last drasha of Chag Shavuot? So they explain as follows. We had before is saying, to fast the meruba like to fast. If a person tries to get a lot, he's not going to get a lot. Therefore, if you have 2 ways to learn a drasha, one for more, one for less, you should always learn it for less. So the same thing could be said over here. You can learn it for weeks, you can learn it for days. So learn it for days. Then learn the last one because the larger one maybe you're wrong, and the lesser one is the right one. So why over here didn't we say to fast the meruba like to fast? So the Gemara says because you have an ode chiddush. You have another teaching. The teaching says Chag Shavuot. It is a week Chag, and therefore it's for the entire week is a Tashlumin. Now the Rambam, Maimonides, he writes very clearly. Don't think for a second that counting Sfirat HaOmer is 2 mitzvot, a mitzvah in the day and a mitzvah in the week. He says it's not that way because if it was that way, you need to make 2 brachot. Asher kishav tzivanu l'spor yimei Sfira, and then another bracha kishav tzivanu l'spor shavuot Sfira. And we don't do that. And second says the Rambam that if that was the case, that the mitzvah is 2 separate mitzvahs, the weeks and days, then I should only count the week after the end of every week. And we don't count at the end of every week. We count every day. Today's 8 days, right? Which is 1 week and 1 day to the Sirah, right? So we say it in a way that counts both, not the week and the day. And he says it's 1 mitzvah and shnei chalakim, and 2 parts to it. Not like the way you would read the Gemara. The Gemara says mitzvah l'minei yomer, mitzvah l'minei shvuei, but you might come to think it means there's 2 mitzvot. Rambam says no. However, Rabbi Yerucham says it is 2 separate mitzvot. Rabbi Yerucham and other Rishonim say it is 2 separate mitzvot. And according to Rabbi Yerucham, the mitzvah of the weeks, counting the weeks, would only be in the Migdash when there was a Migdash, and they would only make the bracha in the Migdash, the second bracha of counting the weeks, according to Rabbeinu Yerucham. The Rambam says no, it's 1 mitzvah, and therefore we count both. We count both the days and the weeks, and that's considered a 1 mitzvah. Okay, fine. So we have another proof that there is a week of Tashlumin, a whole week. Not a whole week of Tashlumin, 7 days, including the Chag. It says in Pasuk, Ukratem uvkutzerchem. There's 1 pasuk. It says Ukratem, and you call out a mikra kodesh. And then in the next following pasuk it says uvkutzerchem et kitiratzachem. When you reap, when you start cutting the produce, which chag do you cut? And you also say that it's a Yom Tov. There must be Chag Shavuot. That's when the cutting starts. Amen. And when do you exactly call out and cut? If you say you're going to do it on Yom Tov, are you allowed to do Ktira, cutting on Yom Tov? We don't allow cutting on Yom Tov. Halacha, we don't allow cutting on Yom Tov, even for preparation of food. We don't allow to cut, meaning not stam cutting. Cutting means from the ground. To be kaitzer, right? To be tailish from the ground. We don't allow that on Yom Tov, right? So Ktsira b'yom tovim mishari, and lav tashlumin. So when the pasuk says ukratem, and then it says ukutzrechem, when do you have a holiday that you can do ktsira? You can't do it on Yom Tov Shavuos, so it must be the days of tashlumin afterwards. But Gavdi Tamar Rabbi Lazar, Gavdi Tamar Rabbi Lazar, Amrab Oshaya. It's Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov. I still need both. I need Rabbi Oshaya's, and I also need Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov. Why? If I just learn from Rabbi Oshaya, why not have a mina? Matashum Shachaga Matzah also B'Siyas Melacha. Tashlumin says Namya Sur B'Siyas Melacha. If I had Rabbi Oshaya's teaching only, which was compare Shavuot to Pesach, just like Pesach has 7. Well, the Shavuot, that's total 7 days you can bring the carbon. I would say, what's so special about Pesach? Pesach, Chol Hamoed, is also the Malacha. We know you're not allowed to do Malacha on Chol Hamoed and all the days of Pesach. So too, maybe the whole week of Tashlumin, I couldn't do any Malacha. So, Kamash Malam, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. So now I have Lezer ben Yaakov. Lezer ben Yaakov says, no, it says, Ukratem Ukutzerchem. It's a holiday, but you also can do work on. When is it? On the Tashlumin. Okay? But if I know Lezer ben Yaakov's, right, which told me that there is a Tashlumin, right? Lo Yadon Kama. I would not know how many days. I need Lezer Roshaya, who said you compare it to Pesach, and there's only 7 days of total for the Tashlumin, the bringing of the carbon. So basically, another teaching that there is a Tashlumin, and both of these teachings, Rabbi Oshaya's teaching and Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov's teaching, are needed to tell us that it's 7 days of Shavuot. There's 1 day of Shavuot, 6 days afterwards, and all those 6 days are actually mutar in Malacha. Reish Lakish said instead of doing Rabbi Eliezer's drasha, where he takes it from two psukim, one pasuk says ukratem, the second pasuk after says ukutzrechem. Look at one pasuk. It says Chag HaKatir, the festival of the harvest. When do you have a chag that you also do kaitzer? Have you said it? You have to say it Shavuot. But when Ilam Yom Tov, you say Yom Tov, consider Yom Tov Shishari. Who lets you do it on Yom Tov? So it says Chag HaKatir. It means the Tashlumin the day after, the days after Shavuot. It says you cannot learn this teaching because you have right there. It says Chag HaAsif, the Yom Tov of ingathering, of collecting everything, which is the Yom Tov of Sukkot. Ezu Chag sheish bo asifa. Heavy Omer zak Chag HaSukkot. Now when? If you say it's Yom Tov, Malacha b'Yom Tov Bishari, you're allowed to do the Malacha of Ma'amar, of collecting everything. Are you allowed to do that on Yom Tov? It must be Chol Shemoyed, the day after the Yom Tov Rishon. Chol Shemoyed Bishari? Who lets you do Malacha on Chol Hamoed? Rather, when it says Chag HaKotzer, Chag HaAsif, it doesn't mean Tashlumin period. It means that the Yom Tov comes in the season of collecting, season of gathering, the season of cutting. That's what it means. So you can't learn it from your Chag HaKatzir, but seems to be you could learn it from Ukratem Ukutzrechem. Okay, so now that we talked about Chol Hamoed, and Reish Lakish didn't argue, Reish Lakish didn't say, what do you mean you could collect on Chol Hamoed? Meklav the Tervayu Sphere Lahu. Must be Reish Lakish both agree that Chol Hamoed Aser B'Asiyat Melacha, that doing Melacha on Chol Hamoed is Aser. From where do we know this? So first of all, the Rishonim argue if it's a Isser Deoraita or an Isser Derabanan when it comes to doing Malacha on Chol Hamoed. Okay? And a person should keep this in his mind. That it's not so easy. It's just Chol Hamoed. No, Chol Hamoed, the Malacha may even be Isser Deoraita. If a person has to be careful and give Chol Hamoed the proper cover that it requires. Right? You're supposed to. You don't have to wear your Shabbat clothing on Chol Hamoed, but a person should dress up a little bit more fancier. I don't know, get a fancier sweater, a fancier pair of pants, and that's the one you wear on Chol Hamoed, a little bit more fancier than usual to put you in the mood. we're going to see which malachot are going to be mutar to do on Chol Hamoed, and in what scenarios they're going to be mutar. But most times, Chol Hamoed, no, you can't do malachot. Okay, where do we know this? The Tanur Rabbanon, it says a Chag Matzot Tishmor Shivat Yamim. It says 7 days you should watch, and then it says Tuchal Matzot. But the Gemara says, look, read the pasuk. It's Chag Matzot, the Yom Tov of Pesach, Tishmor Shivat Yamim. Watch it for 7 days, meaning Tishmor from doing Melacha. Limin Al Chol Shamoid Sha'asur B'Siat Melacha. Divrei Rabbi Yoshia. This is the teaching of Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonatan or Rabbi Yonatan says, "Enol tzarich." I don't need this teaching because Kal v'chomer. I can learn it from a Kal v'chomer. Umar Rishon Shvish. Ein kedusha lefnei ulacharein aser b'siat melacha chol shemayis yesh kedusha lefnei ulacharein eino den shehi sheyeh aser b'siat melacha. So Rabbi Yonatan says, "I'll give you a Kal v'chomer." Listen, we know the first and seventh day you're not allowed to do melacha. That we know. That's straight up in the Torah. So since the first and seventh day, which is not preceded by anything holy, is a day of holiness, he can't do any melacha. Then the Chol Hamoed, which is sandwiched between 2 holy days, then obviously you can't do any melacha. That's his reasoning. The Gemara says, "What are you talking about?" Says the Gemara. You have every week, you have a Shabbat before and a Shabbat after, and the 6 days in the middle, and the 6 days in the middle is mutter melacha. Even though the first and the first Shabbos and the second Shabbos are days you're not allowed to do melacha, and yet the 6 days in the middle you could do melacha. Verse 1 second. You cannot compare the 6 days of creation to Chol Hamoed because why? 6 days of creation on regular 6 days you don't have a korban musaf. Korban musaf doesn't come every day, only when you pray musaf. And so on Chol Hamoed you have musaf. Therefore, it's going to be asas du malacha because of the musafim that are brought on Chol Hamoed. Whereas we're talking about Reish Chodesh Yechiach. Reish Chodesh will say no, prove you no. Sheyesh bo cover musaf or mutar be'asiyat malacha, and one is allowed to do malacha on Rosh Chodesh. Now there is a Chazal that tell us that Rosh Chodesh really was supposed to be like a Yom Tov and it's malacha, and if it's since the Teita Ego, we lost the opportunity to have Rosh Chodesh as a Yom Tov. The ladies who didn't do the Chet Egel, they have somewhat of a Yom Tov on Rosh Chodesh. They don't do laundry, they don't do other work. They have a day out, they have fun. I don't know, whatever they do. But some say that when it comes to Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, like we just had yesterday, then there's Mein Olam Haba, right? Look at the Maze of Mashiach, where the Rosh Chodesh will become a Yom Tov again. And so therefore, on Yom Tov, on Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, there is a Indian of celebrating more. And how you do that, a person makes an extra dish of food or something nice, and that shows that it's Rosh Chodesh. And they also bring down the poskim that if it's Chanukah Rosh Chodesh on Shabbat, then a person should make 2 extra foods than he usually makes in honor of the, not necessarily make, but have, right, either buy, whatever it is, extra foods or kugels or desserts, whatever it is, something to show that it is Hanukkah and Rosh Chodesh and Shabbat, a person can do that. Okay, so you have Rosh Chodesh, it proves that you have Musaf and you can do Malacha. When it says Ma, the Rosh Chodesh and Mikra Kodesh, but Rosh Chodesh is not called Mikra Kodesh. In the Torah, it says Tomar B'Chol Shemayit Shikar Mikra Kodesh. Ha'il Mikar Mikra Kodesh Din Hu Sha'asim Tzit Malacha. So since it says Eila Mikra Kodesh Shekru Otam B'Mo'adam, right? And then it goes into saying about all the Yom Tov. And we learn from that even the Chol Hamoed is called Mikra Kodesh. And it was told to me that by my father and my uncles that my grandfather, my grandmother's father, so my great-grandfather, that on Chol Hamoed Sukkot, even though it was Chol Hamoed, he used to always take the wine and in the sukkah, and he would say, he would make he would say those words, not show it should be a kiddush, but rather that it should be to a mikra kodesh, the mikra kodesh, that it's a holy day, to show that he would do that. So so the Chol Hamoed is a mikra kodesh, and it's also to do malacha. Another source, Tani Idach. It says, Kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu. You shouldn't do any of the melacha. Okay, this is ביום הראשון מקדש כל מלאכה לא תעשו, שאתם תקראו איש אל השם יום השמיני מקדש אליכם, יקרא מי שאיש אל השם says he כל מלאכה לעבודה לא תעשו. Okay, so what do we want to say? לימד אחר שמיים. It teaches regarding Chol Moed. She'eser v'sid melacha. Dever b'yosi haglili. Rabbi Haglili says that if you read the psukim, it says b'yom yikosh kol melacha lo ta'asu shivat yamim. Right? Read it. Kol melacha lo ta'asu. Don't stop at the sof pasuk over there. Continue shivat yamim. 7 days. So 7 days. Don't do any melacha. She'eser v'sid melacha. Dever b'yosi haglili. Rekiv Amar and Tzar. Rekiv says I don't need this. Hooray! Amar Elul Moed Hashem. Right? So it says that. But in Berishon, if it's talking about the first day, I don't need you to tell me on the first day. Because the first day it says, Shabbaton. And then, if you're telling me about the last day, Shabbaton. It doesn't say Shabbaton. Right? Because it says, Shabbaton. So what is this Mikra Kodesh? What day is it going on? To tell you that it's usher in the doing of melacha. So you have here source after source. Rabbi Akiva. You had the Rabbanan. You had the rabbi. You had all Rabbi Yoshia, Rabbi Yonatan, all of them. Usher b'melacha. Tani idach. It was thrown on the right. It says, "Sheshit yamim tochal matzot u'mayom hashvi atzeret la'Hashem Elokecha lo ta'aseh melacha." Okay. Now, what does atzeret mean? Ma shvi atzur. What does it mean? Shvi is atzur. It means that you have to stop the work, right? Atzur can also mean to stop. Now, Mashvi Atzur Av Sheshit Yamim Atzurim. Why? Because now the pasuk says, right? The pasuk says, I understand, says now is going on the whole pasuk. Sheshit Yamim, Sheshit Yamim Atzurim. All the days you're not going to do melacha. So, now I might think on just like Shivi'i, you're also in all melacha. Av shesh yamim atzurim b'chol melacha. Talmud Lomer Yom HaShivi'i atzeret. HaShivi'i atzur b'chol melacha. Ve'en shisha yamim atzur b'chol melacha. But the 6 days is not also in all melacha. Now, which one is that? Which one is no? Ha lo masrana katuv. Ha lo masrana katuv. 1 second, I just want to read this. He says over here, the pasuk says, "Uvayom hashevi'i." So on the 7th day, that's the day that everything is asur. But in the other days, most of the stuff are asur. So how do we know what's what? The Torah gave the power to tell what is asur, what is not, to the chachamim. Lo melacha, eze yom asur, eze yom mutar. We already know that the rabbis have the power to tell you which day is asur and which day is mutar to do melacha. How we know this? We say because the rabbis, they can decide when is Rosh Chodesh, even though the witnesses come. The witnesses don't come. They can push the Rosh Chodesh here and there. They have the ability to do that. And based on what they say, even though the person could say astronomically today is actually the Rosh Chodesh, right? And we had the case in the Mishnayot, Rosh Hashanah, where the rabbi said today is Yom Kippur. The other said no, tomorrow is Yom Kippur. Now you're on Yom Kippur, you come to me with your money and your belt and all that, and he did it. Why? Because it goes by the rabbis when they decide. So they already tell you what day is mutar, what day is asur. Ezo melacha asura, ezo melacha muteret, and which melacha is mutar. So briefly, just to mention, when it comes to Chol Shel Moed, which melachot are asur and which melachot are mutar. So, but there, Klal, a person needs to think that they're all asur. Let's just read a little bit here that he brings down mostly from the Rambam, but let's take a look. Chol Shel Moed. Af Shalom Rabbi Shabbaton Hoil V'Nikra Mikra Kodesh V'Rei Huzman Chagiga B'Migdash Aser B'Yasiyat Melacha Tishal Kasher Yom HaZachal Shein B'Gusha Kla. V'oisem malacha osura yesh omrim shemakim oto makam ardut. V'pnei she'usurim midivei sofrim v'chein dat Rambam. V'yesh omrim she'usurim min haTorah. Okay, there are those who say that the isur malacha is an isur min haTorah, and this is the shittas of the Rif and the Rashi and the Rashbam and other Rishonim. And there are those who say that there are only the Rabbanan, right? This is the Ramban, the Rashba, and other Rishonim. Therefore, a person should be very careful because it's a very big possibility that it's actually a deraita to do malacha on Chol Moed. Now, not everything's asur. The reason why they put this into place is because the person shouldn't think that it's a regular day. Some are mutter, some are asur. Depends on the case. Wherever the rabbis felt that it's good to be mutar. There's 5 categories that are mutar, and these are them. Davar of it. Something that's a big loss. If I don't do it, I'm going to lose out. If I don't buy the sale, I don't make the deal, I don't do this, I don't do that, it's going to be a big loss. So then a person, we don't want you to lose out, and therefore a person can do it on Chol Moed. Tzarchei Moed, something that you need for the Moed, right? Tzarchei Moed, you need to go fishing to get fish, okay? You need to do some malacha like that. You can do. Tzarchei Moed, people use in the sense for the Chol Moed. I go to trips. I drive here, I drive there. Why? Because it's for Tzarchei Moed. I need it to enjoy the Chol Moed. The person can do that. Bishvil po'el she'en lo ma she'ochel. If a person, a po'el, someone who's a worker, and he doesn't have any money, okay, and he doesn't have money what to eat and stuff like that, you can hire him to do any jobs. He can hire himself out. You can hire him because you're helping him get food for himself. Tzarchei rabim, stuff that are needed for the community, all right, you can do. And ma'aseh hedgit, someone wants to fix something at home, and he's doing it as a non-professional, he'll be allowed to do it. Again, these are just the general categories of what is mutar. But other than that, like a person cannot keep his car, especially, I need the oil change, but you know what, I don't have time to do it. I'll do it in Chol Moed when I have off. Or, I got to balance my checkbook. I'll do it in Chol Moed. I have the shed door, the screen door, the this, the that that's been waiting around. Oh, I have some time in Chol Moed to do it. I'll do it. You can't do that. You can't do that. Chol Moed has to be treated respectfully. You cannot save these chores to do on Chol Moed. Okay. Last piece of Gemara for today. Let's take a look. So we had in the Mishnah said that when the Yom Tov was on Sunday, right? So according to Bet Shammai, that's if the Yom Tov was on Friday or the Yom Tov was on Shabbat. According to Bet Hillel, if Yom Tov was on Shabbat, then you can't bring it on Shabbat. So the Yom Tov, the makeup day, Yom Tov would be on Sunday. The Mishnah said that because it was on a Sunday, therefore it was allowed to do ta'anit and do hesped. Usually, you're not allowed to do ta'anit and hesped when you bring the korban, right? When you bring korbanot. But here we wanted to allow it. Why? Because the Tzdukim said that Shavuot always falls out on a Sunday. And even though it's not really Shavuot, but it's a Yom Tovach, you're bringing the korban, they're going to say, you see, we were right. So in order to undermine the Tzdukim, we said, you know what, you can do hespedim and you can do ta'anit on that day. So to not to fulfill those words of those who say that Shavuot is always on a Sunday. Tanya, there was a story. Ma'aseh umet Alexa belud. There was a Talmid Chacham and his name was Alexa, and he died in Lud. Okay. Yes, Alexa is a name from Alexander. Okay, so a lot of names come out of Alexander, Hanukkah, Greeks, Macedonia, right? The Jews said instead of coming and putting your statues here and stuff like that, we'll name all the boys Alexander. It's been a name in the Jewish world since then. And the name also has taken on different derivatives: Alexander, Sender, Sander. I believe in Russian also Alexander is also for Sasha somehow. It's a name that taken off, and many Jews still have this name till today. It's also used in a feminine way, Alexandria. It's the name of many places. He was a big guy in the end of the day. And this Talmid Chacham had the name Alexa. It's not just your Amazon Alexa. This is an actual Alexa as a Talmid Chacham. And everyone came to give a hesped for him. But lo hinicham Rabbi Tarfon. Because it was Shavuot. The Gemara says Yom Tov Salka Datach. Can you think it's really a Yom Tov? Even Yom Tov Mika'atu, where people actually get together in Yom Tov to be maspid somebody. Everyone knows Yom Tov you cannot do Hespedim. It wasn't a Yom Tov. It was Yom Tevoach. It was a Yom Tevoach. It was a day of slaughter. I thought the day of slaughter you could do Hespedim and Ta'anit. So why is Rabbi Tarfon not allowing them, or he's not happy with that? Like Kasha, Gemara says, Kabi Yom Tov Shechaliot Acher Shabbat, Kabi Yom Tov Shechaliot B'Shabbat. It depends. If the day was only the question is, if it was another day other than Sunday, that's the way to understand the Gemara. Yom Tov Shechaliot Acher Shabbat, Kabi Yom Tov Shechaliot B'Shabbat. If it fell on Shabbat the Yom Tov, and now the Yom Tevoach is on Sunday, this was the day that you didn't want to sukip to think that it was their Shavuot. Therefore, that's the day Hespedim and Ta'anit were okay. But if it was any other day, then really you should stay away from Hespedim and Ta'anit, because the Maisa, you're bringing a Korbanot, and there's no stukim concerned at that time. So the Bryce's case rules fell during the week, so they were not occurring. Hence, a concern for Sadducee opinion was not a factor, and Sir Tarfon did not allow eulogies. Okay, fine. Some want to say the issue is Isser Chag. How can you do it on Isser Chag? Not necessarily Yom Tevoach. Fine, and we can take a look at that note. 38. This is where we will end for today. Asher Koach, Chanukah Sameach, Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov, L'kulam.